Greetings, everybody. On behalf of the Pride Forward Employee Resource Group of the USA Today Network and Diversity Inclusion Task Force of the Tennessean, we are bringing you this live broadcast from Music City, Nashville, Tennessee, in the Tennessean building. I'm David Plazas, Opinion and Engagement Director for the Tennessean and the USA Today Network Tennessee. I'm also the Pride Forward co-lead with Kevin Hurd, who is based in Detroit. And today I'm moderating a conversation around diversity, inclusion, and equity around LGBTQIA business issues. We have three panelists with us today. We have Brady O'Rourke, who is President and CEO of Social Link, a virtual marketing department specializing in outsourcing full funnel marketing and sales departments. We have next to him Rachel Stanton, who's founder and CEO of Diversity Builder, a prominent workplace training company providing diversity and inclusion and harassment prevention courses. And last but not least, we have Joe Woolley, the CEO of the Nashville LGBT Chamber of Commerce. What is unique in a sense about today is that we're coming to you from the heartland, and from a state whose political leadership has at times been hostile toward LGBTQ inclusion. Our conversation today will focus on successes, challenges, and obstacles, and of course, hopes for the future. A reminder that October is LGBTQ History Month, and today is Spirit Day, a day to embrace kindness and to work to end bullying, hence why Joe and I are wearing purple today. If you have questions for the panel, you can email me at dplazas@tennessean.com or email prideforward@gannett.com. And you can also comment on this video, which is being broadcast on the Tennessean's YouTube video. So I'd like to start today by asking each of the panelists to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you gained the success. So let's start with you, Brady.
Sure, thanks David for having me here. I started Social Link about 10 years ago. It was always a hobby of mine. 2 years ago, we did a rebrand and went full force into it. And just recently, we joined the LGBT Chamber. Joe's been very helpful in getting us registered, and it's really helped to open up a lot of new opportunities for us, especially when it comes to government contracts and people that are exclusively looking to work for LGBT-friendly companies.
Thank you. Rachel?
Yes, it is an honor to be here, and we're honored to be part of the Between the Coast crew, and thank you, David. For us, as you mentioned, we do have, we help organizations build better workplace cultures. And we started out in 2003 as a diversity directory, primarily to help LGBT individuals find health care that would welcome them. So that was more of a directory in the beginning. You asked about the success. What we found was within that directory, providers would ask us, how do we want to be inclusive? We want to increase our diversity and our hiring. How do we do that? And that's how our training division was born, and it's been very successful thanks to the LGBT Chamber and just that innovation that we seek on a regular basis.
Thank you very much. Joe?
I'm so proud of my members here. I'm like watching you guys and I'm like, yes. We advocate, educate, and connect the community. We do that in a lot of different ways, for our corporate members, to our small business members, to individual networking members, nonprofits, to corporations. We really are the connector when it comes to the LGBT community, and more broadly to Metro, to Nashville, to the community. We advocate for LGBT business owners. Our mission is to promote equality through business, and we're focused on that every day. That takes a lot of different shapes. Of course, advocacy, and then there's a lot of education. And then we're also a networking organization where you can make connections, do business, and it's lovely to be here with the USA Today Network, who is a member of ours. Our growth and mirrors the city of Nashville. We're on a boom, just like the city of Nashville is. We're up to 483 members as of today. That's 30% growth in just a year. Corporations are moving here, and diversity and inclusion, having a diverse workforce, an inclusive community is top of their list of what they want. So we're seeing business engage around advocacy like never before. So there's a lot of things we're working on, and it's great to be here to talk about that.
I mentioned earlier that we are in the heartland, and there are some challenges when it comes to representation in a state like Tennessee. Joe, could you tell us a little bit about the landscape and a little bit about Tennessee Thrives and the importance of that?
Yeah. We are a blue bubble in a red state. And people see that. When they hear of Nashville, they think the South. they think Tennessee, they think conservative values, hateful LGBT, anti-LGBT legislation that's being put out at the state level. We're not the only state facing that, though. Business is booming. There's a new report came out this year about LGBT quality of life issues. Tennessee ranked 46th in the country. There's only 4 states below us, and they're below us by 0.2 points. So we're at the bottom. But around business issues, we're number one. Number one on taxes, number one on relocation opportunities, number one on government regulations. We're booming on everything in business. And you can see that by the companies that are starting up here or relocating here, especially from California. So it's an interesting thing to look at, that these companies are coming across the country from California. They're bringing their values with them. They're not leaving them at the state line. So we have seen business engage, especially around LGBT quality of life issues, like never before in this city or state. And we work with that at the state level. Tennessee Thrives is a coalition of businesses that was formed to push back against anti-LGBT legislation, to keep Tennessee open and equal for all, not to have discriminatory legislation pass. Everybody's afraid that something big is going to pass, and who's going to become the next North Carolina. North Carolina, of course, had the bathroom bill passed several years ago, faced massive boycotts, and was hurt very badly financially from those. So we try to educate lawmakers on what could come with hateful legislation to really, companies want to be able to attract and retain the best talent out there. And that is young, well-educated millennial talent. Diversity and inclusion, LGBT issues is top of their list when they're choosing a company, but also when they're choosing where they want to live or relocate for a job. And anti-LGBT legislation hurts Tennessee's ability to do that effectively, to make people want to live here, move here, and work here.
And Rachel and Brady, I wanted to ask you, from your perspective as business owners, could you share with our audience what are some of the struggles that you face and how did you overcome them? And maybe we could start with Rachel and then go to Brady.
Sure. Well, we've been around since 2003, so we certainly faced many struggles then, from maybe some microaggressions when we went to the Williamson County Chamber, asking the first question, what does your husband do for a living? So those types of assumptions came in, or some comments of that nature. As a business directory that had the healthcare piece to it, we would get quite a bit of offensive comments and a lot of hang-ups when we talk to people, along with we did get one threat from a ammunition company, as you can imagine, that could happen back in 2003. And to overcome that, we just we were ourselves. We talked to them, those who might have had an offensive comment or not wanted to be a part of this. We had conversations, and that's where the climate does start changing. We are real people, and we are likable, and there are conversations to be had that can just start moving the needle a little bit, and that can make a big difference. As far as later on, as we entered into 2010 and beyond, we lost contracts. We lost contracts in training because might have come out that we are LGBT owned, or they might have seen that on our website. And from a religious perspective, many times they would choose another provider when they were going to go with us. So fast forward to 2019, we are now being sought after because of the LGBT inclusion training that we provide twice in the past couple of weeks in Tennessee, which was surprising. And then, of course, all over the nation, especially when you're looking at California having new legislation around gender identity, gender and sexual orientation laws related to harassment. So.
And I think So we're a virtual marketing agency and sales force, and so our employees come from all over the nation. We have a hyper focus here in Nashville, and our culture is built very strongly on a flat model and making sure that everybody has equal parts in the business and responsibilities. And because of our virtual model, we attract some of the best talent. And how we address that up front with our clients is we put it right in our pitch decks right up front. Because we want to make sure that the people that we're working with also align with our values internally, externally. And I think that just, being upfront about it right in the beginning, make sure that you're attracting and let businesses know that, hey, this is what we stand for. If you are aligned with us, then this is going to be a great partnership. If not, you might want to look somewhere else.
The issue of supplier diversity has also come up, and whether it's looking at other corporations, the kind of work that you do there, or even government service, would you please address that issue of how do you start those conversations, and what are some of the advances? And obviously, we had some news a few months ago when former Mayor Briley signed into law essentially a statute saying that they were going to accept LGBT, or they were going to consider LGBT-owned businesses as also minority contractors. Joe, could you talk about that, please?
It was central to some of the advocacy that we'd been working on for years. And this is to have LGBT certified businesses recognized in minority spend, diversity spend, procurement policies. This is something that, again, corporate America started, and we've been getting the government to play catch up. They're following suit like they do oftentimes. It's the corporate worlds that are leading and government follows. And that's what we can advocate and change. But so we advocated for several years with several mayors to get this done. This was all part of a broader minority spend procurement issue that the city was undertaking, specifically around minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses, and it showed that they were way underperforming on the amount of spend towards those businesses. LGBT businesses weren't even counted because we weren't tracked. So our goal going in was to have the box added so an LGBT business could check it and we could show that we weren't being treated equally. Because if that data is not there, you can't make that point. As the discussions from the Minority Business Council continued, there were some comments from other stakeholders that were eye-opening. We took that to the mayor and he said, what's your end goal? It can't just be to be counted. And we said, well, eventually we want LGBT business owners to be recognized with their certification in minority spend and procurement for the city. And he said, well, how do we make that happen? And we knew how, so we said, well, this is all it takes. He's like, let's do it. So in February, Nashville became the first city in the South, the 13th in the country, to recognize LGBT businesses in city procurement and diversity spend. We beat out cities like Chicago and LA that just did it. New York is still in the process or may have just completed it. Atlanta, the Atlanta mayor walked into her office the day after and said, how in the expletive did Nashville beat us at this? Which I love, and I've been down several times to work with the mayor and the city of Atlanta to do this as well. But it's a good thing. It shows that, and it's not about, you get sucked into you're taking my piece of the pie. And we should never talk about that. We should talk about growing the pie. That's what equity is. And that really is where the conversation is going around supplier diversity, minority spend, diversity spend, it's equity, not about my piece, your piece. We shouldn't be fighting over scraps. We should be working together to get more representation for marginalized business owners and a fair treatment when they go for contracting. We're very proud of that. The new mayor here is going to let that stand, and it's spreading across the city or across the country. And it's exciting that Nashville was early in adopting that. So now what we're faced with is getting business owners, LGBT business owners, certified. There's a national certification process, just like any other women, Black, Hispanic-owned business has to go through a certification process. And then once they're certified, finding them contracts that they can go after. It's been difficult because they'll look and say, well, So Nissan has been recognizing LGBT businesses for a long time. Again, corporate America set the tone and started this. Government is following. But LGBT business owners look at some of these companies and say, well, I don't make tires, or I don't make a part for a car. I don't build sidewalks for the city, so I'm not going to be able to benefit from those. No, diversity spend is a big thing. So if you own a food truck and you can go out to one of our corporate members and park in front of their building for their Food Truck Friday, you're being counted in their diversity spend. It's getting the businesses to recognize that, but then also our business owners to certify and look for opportunity in those ways. So that's what we've been doing now. The NFL draft coming to Nashville was huge with this, because they come in with a program called Business Connect, and they spend all of their money with minority-owned businesses first. And then they go to local companies, and then they'll go regional and national to fulfill what they can't do in those steps. That was a game changer for us last year when the draft came here, and we ended up having 32 members in Business Connect, and 13 of those were LGBT certified. So that's a little bit about that. And then both of our LGBT certified businesses, you were actually our first,
Yes.
and one of our newest, and now it's working with, we're working with the Airport Authority now. So another quasi-governmental organization to recognize LGBT certified businesses. The federal government, there is opportunity there. So we take it as the chamber, it's part of our mission to make sure that our LGBT BEs, business enterprises, are connected to those opportunities so they can take advantage of them.
Rachel, Brady, we take us through that process. So how difficult was it, and what were some of the challenges to actually get certified, and what's the difference now for you as business owners?
Yeah, so we learned about it through one of the chamber meetings. Joe, that was one of the first things that Joe educated me on, and we quickly got in line to get registered. It did take a little bit of time for us to get through the process. It was about 2 or 3 months, and somebody from Memphis ended up coming over and helping us get certified. And I was so passionate about it that I actually turned around and got registered myself to help businesses get certified in the local area, because I think it's really important that we recognize that this is something special happening in Nashville, and we really need to take full advantage of it and try to lead, especially because we are in the South and it's not as easy. And so, and another way that we counter that is we put all of our chamber stickers right on the door, and we're very, very proud of being a chamber member.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, sure. So back when the first certification took place, I want to say 2007-ish, maybe, somewhere in there.
First started to roll out.
Right, it started to roll out. So we worked with Justin and Chance from the NGLCC to secure that certification. And I think over the years they've tried to make it even easier and make it to where LGBT businesses really can get in the game and really can get that certification without it being too arduous. So to me, it's similar to the women-owned business process, and maybe you could speak to that as far as, but it's definitely doable, and the chamber provides training and coaching on that to help us through it every step of the way.
So they make it easier, the process of applying, but it is still as rigorous. It's a national certification, so the LGBT chamber here does not do it. We're an affiliate chamber, so we're their connector, their connection to national. Their certification fee is waived if you're a member of a affiliate chamber. But it goes to national, and then what Brady was talking about are the site visits. So after you've applied and you've provided all the documentation that you have to, the more organized you are as a business owner, I find that the easier it is if you know where all your documents are. I know people that have done it in 3 hours and they're done. Then what happens is a site visit, and I'm very glad that you got certified to go do site visits, because we had the problem of drinking from a fire hose. Once we turned on that hose of LGBT business certification, we then had to go out and try to certify everybody, and we faced that struggle. So it's great to have people joining the team, so to speak, to get more people certified. But it is a rigorous certification process. It is matched and built off of women-owned and other minority-owned certifications.
And Rachel, I was wondering if you could talk a little about your work in inclusion, LGBT work. We recently took a training across the USA Today Network, 109 publications from coast to coast, called Ally Training, to talk about how do you essentially recognize the needs, microaggressions you had mentioned as well. What is that inclusion like? What are some of the things that you tell people they should think about, or maybe things they shouldn't do, the pitfalls itself in terms of really creating an inclusive environment?
Well, inclusion starts with your team and that close circle around you in the workplace. So one thing that might seem obvious is getting to know your coworkers by asking questions and by taking diversity to lunch, meeting people that might not share your same, might not be just like you, might be quite a bit different than you, where we're as humans a little bit hesitant to do that sometimes. So taking those chances and those steps towards inclusion by going outside of your comfort zone. And another thing that we talk about is that silence is agreement. So intervening when there is maybe a joke that might tinge on a microaggression or towards even harassment, to speak up and to feel empowered by your company to be able to do that. So that starts with leadership. So I've kind of backed into, it does all start with the leadership and knowing that you're empowered to take a stand for diversity and inclusion, and that you'll be backed up by your team and your leaders.
It has to stop from it starts from the top down. Companies, corporations that get it, it is built into their culture from the top to the bottom. And it shows in that way. You can tell people that are talking the talk, but they're not walking the walk. Diversity and inclusion is the hottest thing right now in corporate America. And it's amazing to see how they are competing to be the most inclusive company, because that's how they're attracting the best talent, young talent out there. Is you may have two tech companies, similar jobs, they're going to those inclusion efforts as who they're going to choose. And if you're not representing your LGBT community, the LGBT community, they see that. There are so many ally programs, employee resource groups and ally programs, like you just mentioned that you guys had on how to be an ally or to show that you're an ally. Diversity, we all know what diversity is. It's boxes, checking boxes, and the makeup. And then there's inclusion. One of the common things that you say in the work is diversity's being asked to the dance, inclusion's being asked to dance once you're there. There's a lot that take it another step and say actually inclusion is picking the music and the decorations and the food that are going to be served at this dance. That's true inclusion. And so that's where the work is right now, and then equity's following that. So making sure everybody has access to the opportunity to be included. But it is the thing that we do most with our corporate members. Coming in and just talking about things is a key to that. So I'll go into a corporate member and say, ask if your intention's good, there's no wrong question. And there's still so much education that we need to do and have around LGBT issues. And I think a lot of times people are afraid to really tackle the tough stuff. They're afraid that they're going to misidentify something or pronoun somebody or say the wrong word. So we hold true education and true conversation back. So to journalists, I would say, like, make sure that you're comfortable in it. Know where to go if you do make a mistake. It's to apologize and move on. Don't make a big deal about it. You don't have to say, like, well, I'm this person and I believe this. It's fine. You made a mistake. Recognize it. Move on. You've learned something. But it goes to the community, too. I challenge the community to say it's your responsibility to continue this conversation, especially to our trans brothers and sisters. it is the next, it's one where we're being attacked in state legislatures. And two, it's where the most education needs to happen. And I think people are a lot of times afraid to talk about trans issues. I am by no means the person that needs to be talking about them because I don't identify as trans, and only a trans person can really talk to you about what it means to be trans. But we need to all have a basic understanding of the issues. We need to talk about it. We need to be open about it, and that all happens with education and continuing these tough conversations. So I commend any company that's doing this work, and that's what we do with them, is making sure that they can talk about it.
I mentioned before this broadcast that we are a business that's about words, and so right now we're really focusing on, are we using the right language when we talk about pronouns? If we misgender someone, especially when it comes to issues like police stories or things like that, or any other stories with healthcare, what are some of the tips that you might have for business leaders and maybe even a journalism company in terms of how do you understand how to evolve these, because many of these things do evolve. What are some resources they might look at as well?
Are you talking about transgender in particular, or gender identity and gender expression? Well, it is ever evolving, and there are some great resources online, of course. There are many documents that you can reference there that are up to date. At the same time, I think one of the easiest things is to ask rather than to assume. So many times, and we've even mentioned it here, that people are assuming what our relationship is or assuming what our gender identity is, and it's okay to ask. That's where that conversation comes in and takes you past the ally training. It takes you into what can we do as an actionable plan that we can continue the conversation, as Joe said.
I think one of the other things is just understanding that I mean, we're all human, and you know, we don't always understand exactly what's going on behind the scenes, but we just need to respect each other and just understand that that people are going through things that you may not ever be able to understand or be able to grasp, and just respect them as a person and as a human. And I think that's really important going forward.
I've been in this business now for about 20 years, and with this company almost 20 years as well, and the notion of coming out is much different 20 years ago than it is today. You have perhaps a lot more open-mindedness, a lot more education, but do you confront it all in the chamber and your businesses, how to start that conversation with someone who may not feel comfortable being out? How do you convince them that there's a welcoming environment that you have there?
The chamber's 21 years old. So similar. It started, 20 years ago. It was a different world in corporate America and in society. The Nashville LGBT Chamber of Commerce started out as the Nashville Association of Professional People. It was a closeted LGBT organization. They would meet, network, exchange cards, and they met at friendly businesses. It's evolved into what it is now, where we are a very open organization. Companies have led the way again in making sure that you can bring your whole self to work. Society in general, you look at polling, and LGBT issues continue to not be an issue, except with a certain group in the country. But overall, the younger you go, the more accepting it is. To me, we're almost in this point where it's kind of flipped, where the community is demanding a lot more, and it's hard to keep up with what is, like the pronoun LGBTQIA+. We haven't continued to educate our allies on what all of that means, so it often then becomes you feel uncomfortable about it, and you might be an ally, but now you're getting information thrown at you, and then when you ask about it, you might get attacked for your question. That's where I'm going with, we need to continue to talk about it, assume good intent. You know when it's not good intent, when something's asked of you, and have a conversation, educate, tell somebody what you know about it. And that education helps bridge that gap. That's why it's so important that corporations have employee resource groups like this, is having discussions like this. And the media needs to continue to have these discussions.
You were recently at a Black Pride event, I believe, and we're talking about intersectionality. Our employee resource groups represent multiple affinity groups, whether it's African American or Latino, women, veterans. What are some of the suggestions or advice you might have to bring some of these groups together when you do have a common interest, be it an issue of race, ethnicity, gender, or even veteran status, for example?
So LGBT people are going to be in any other group, and they are, because LGBT people are everywhere. I love having that conversation of, well, LGBT people are in every race, religion, we're everywhere. I have been very interested in having a conversation around the Black community and the LGBT community, because it wasn't until I started working around, really working in this city around diversity spend, did the non-acceptance of Black leaders emerge towards LGBT issues. And our Black LGBT members, they're a marginalized of a marginalized community. They have a home with the LGBT chamber. We accept them. We work every day to be the most inclusive organization there is. There's a lot of work to be done, and that we want to have a part in within acceptance of the Black community and the LGBT community. We need to continue to talk about this. And those business owners and those community members need even more support. But there's a lot of intersectionality. We work together, the Black Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber, we're all working together here to make Nashville the most equitable city in America. That's kind of our tagline and our mission statement. And that's paying off through real actions. But there's a lot of work still to be done. But employee resource groups specifically, Nissan, one of our corporate members here, they just launched a faith ERG. So it's big umbrella faith. But I think those employee resource groups, like the LGBT or a Black or a woman's, is how you build bridges. Because if you think about a faith ERG, you're there talking about faith. A Muslim, a Jew, and a Christian are sitting around talking about what faith means to them. And in the South, it's funny because this comes from the more people are coming to the South to work here, faith is church is part of your life. Faith is part of your life here in the South. So there's almost this there's a need to talk about it, to educate on it. You want to bring your whole self to work. Faith is part of your whole self. So I love that corporations are talking about these groups of people that work for them and making everybody feel included. That this is your place. You can bring your whole self to work, no matter what you are, what you believe, how you identify, and we're going to respect you. That's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm. And as business owners, how do you create an environment that is inclusive and friendly, and where people can talk about these issues if they do have a concern?
I mean, we're very upfront right in our interview process about our culture and what we stand for. No bullying. We don't do cliques. We try to stay as flat as possible and stay away from the hierarchies. There's a time and a need for a hierarchy, but really we want everybody to be a resource to each other. Our graphic designers are talking to our developers, and they're not reporting to one or another. And that's part of our interview process is promoting our culture. And again, that's why we're able to attract some of the best talent in the nation, is because that's what they're looking for. They're really looking for a business and a place where they're able to do what they love and be who they are. Being that we have a remote first culture, they can do that from anywhere in the world, which is even better. So that's part of we're very upfront about that on our advertising. We're very upfront about that on our website, and through the interview process, we just try to make sure that that's communicated to them. And honestly, we deal a lot with like Gen Z coming up, and there's no doubt in my mind that that generation is the next level of all inclusive. I've seen just based off of just like the interview process alone, that's like forefront for them. And bullying is a big deal. All inclusion in general is definitely something that I see that generation looking for, and freedom to be able to bring your whole self to work.
Yes, so we are a diversity and inclusion company. We certainly try to lead by example in our inclusive hiring practices. We have trainers throughout the country, and we try to look to hire people that aren't like us. So we definitely have a wide spectrum of trainers, including a couple of trainers that identify as transgender, and it's really fun to put them on assignments that open up doors for the community. If we want to talk the whole LGBT umbrella, we also have the opportunity to advise companies on how to be inclusive, and a lot of times it starts with that culture, as Joe and Brady mentioned. It also goes back to policies and procedures and going back up that spectrum to that leadership. We're seeing a lot of leaders, and you might have seen this within the chamber, that are having performance based, being rated on their diversity and inclusion efforts. And I see that as a big positive and a trend that's going forward, and that's also within the higher education community.
Again, if you're just joining us, this is a broadcast of the Pride Forward Employee Resource Group of the USA Today Network, and also the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force of the Tennessean. A special thanks to Michael Anastasi, who's our regional editor, who sends us hellos from out of town. And I also want to give a shout out to Brent Snyder, who has been filtering some questions to us through the Teams Up. He's our membership coordinator for the Employee Resource Group and a salesman extraordinaire for the Tennessean. And the question he has here is, how can larger corporate companies like our own influence diversity and inclusion on local levels or even in office settings?
Having a strong leader running so we have corporate headquarters here, and their head of diversity and inclusion come to we do a quarterly meeting called Pride in Business. It's ERG leaders that get in a room and talk about, like, I'm facing this issue. We had a conservative company that started one, and one of their employees came and said, we got complaints because we set up a table in the quad area of the company, and people were offended that we were doing this. So they complained, and now we're not allowed to do this anymore. Well, there were other companies that have won national awards around diversity and inclusion work that said, oh yeah, we faced that the first time we did it too. You've got to have leadership buy-in, where the leadership says, sorry you were offended, this is a value of the company, this is what we're doing. And then we also did this. So they get to ask each other questions, they get to share success stories. The companies that aren't headquartered here, when it's not the head person that are attending those, again, it goes back to having a strong leader, having a clear budget. Within companies, it's all about the budget. So having a budget to do something for your employee resource group is important. Making sure you're getting, wherever you might be headquartered, getting that headquarter buy-in, that you're doing everything they want you to do, and you're working at it. I know everybody has 26 job tasks that they've got to get done, but if you're taking that role, it needs to be a pivotal part of what you're doing and building that sense of community within the office. So a real commitment to it from the top and leadership, from the people that are leading the ERG, and making sure it's a strong group of allies and supporters. Does that go to answer the question?
I believe so. I don't know if either Rachel or Brady have some thoughts, or if people, if other business owners ask for advice from you of how do you create that environment, what do you tell them?
Well, I think to start with what Joe said, he definitely sees the leadership side and the buy-in and so forth. It does get back to the individual person and how that person feels. As your company goes out and talks to external partners or people you're interviewing or what have you, or vendors, they'll know how they were treated, how they were included, how they were welcomed. And that inclusive conversation and communication really bridges a lot of gaps. I would see it. I would see it if I were here, and how I hear from you, how you include me. Even the security person that brought us up was very respectful and very much asked questions of us. So that was great. He said he worked for you. So those are things we notice. And as individuals, we notice how we are treated, and we will share that with others. So I think you're off to a great start.
A shout out to William Eddy and also to Beverly Burnett, who brought the water. Well, Brady, there's a question specific to you, if I can ask that. Is that all right? So it says, being in marketing, do you have LGBT clients that have had issues promoting their brand because of identifying as LGBT, and how have you helped them navigate that?
So we're actually working with a local nonprofit. She's a judge here in Nashville, and they're funding a campaign called I Am Human. And I think part of it is again, like, helping them be comfortable with being out and proud. And that helps to attract the right people and the right clientele around them. Maybe if they're not willing to accept that, it's just not a good fit. And it's, in a business, it is about finding a good fit for you and your company, and that also translates down into your employees. You know, if you've got clients or other businesses that you're working with that aren't comfortable with it, it's going to erode your culture, and it's going to erode what's happening inside and everything that we stand for. And so I think that's really important, that we just help them also get comfortable with the fact that you should be out, you should be proud, and you should be able to find the right relationships that align with your company values. And if you can't, and if there's a hurdle, maybe we can look at, you know, other options and other businesses that are going to be a better fit for you long term.
Joe?
If you're going to be out and proud or accepting, you need to be ready for the backlash that comes with it. Don't you feel on social media? Because there's always going to be.
Yes, I think you definitely have to have tough skin, and you have to just kind of, you know, the trolls, as we call it, let them be trolls, and a lot of times, even on social media, you know, there's a lot of proud people out there. Let the community, let the public correct them. You as a business owner necessarily don't have to do that. You can let other people influence their decisions, and some people you just won't be able to change their mind, and you have to be okay with that, and just walk away from the conversation and keep your head up.
Yeah. So in Nashville, during Pride Month, we had one of our news stations do a post about Happy Pride, 1st of June. And the other news station, another news station, changed their logo to a rainbow for Pride. And the backlash on Facebook was swift and large. And they changed it back to the original. Well, then the backlash from the LGBT ally community was swift and large. So it was a no-win scenario. So I think, and this had been a long-time supporter of the community, had done a lot for LGBT citizens, and was a big equality advocate as a business here in the city for a long time. And it was a tough hit. But again, it's like having those clear policies on social media and marketing. And if you're going to be supportive, or you're going to be out and proud, know what's going to come with it, is my advice to companies and LGBT business owners, because there's still a lot of haters out there. And I think social media is going to be the downfall of our society, because you lose all civility and you say things on there you would never say to someone's face. And I think unless you're ready for that, it will hurt you.
And that's a really interesting point, because this whole question of what would you say to somebody, but we're in an era of the cancel culture. The people get angry at an airline or get angry at a newspaper, angry at a business, suddenly never doing this again. And do you communicate directly to your clients via social media? And what are some tips that you might provide to others about, especially when it comes to sensitive issues? It could be LGBT issues, but other ways. How can you use the radical empathy that you're showing here to perhaps fix some problems out there?
That's a great question. It looks like.
I mean, part of it is again, I'm just being transparent, and I mean, that's the whole thing, really. I mean, you just really have to have a strong backbone. You have to be ready for it. I personally didn't come out until I was 23 years old, and I know what it's like to be on that other side. And I with transgenders, I can't imagine what they're going through at this point, just because it is scary. But again, it's all about just being human and being transparent and keeping your head up high and being proud.
On the social media side, I think too, it's just important to be prepared. Apparently this news station was not quite prepared for what might happen. To be prepared and have plan A, B, and C, really know your message and be comfortable with your message before you put it out there. And then you will have allies that come and stand up for you. You'll be surprised what might happen when you do stand up through social media, and really say something positive. Really focus on the positive and how we can put a positive spin on this. You know, Joe had said before, it was increasing a part of the pie rather than taking it, and that's the kind of message we want to send in general, that we're here as LGBT business owners to be a part of the business community and really enhance it. So those are some things I thought of in relation.
Well, last Friday was National Coming Out Day, and one of the things that was really interesting this week was Gio Benitez, who's a reporter for ABC News, wrote a letter to his 12-year-old self of the things he learned, that things will be okay. Would you have any advice for your own younger self, probably the pre-out self, of how things turned out and so things to really focus on, especially for young people who are still struggling perhaps with the issue? We had the very sad case of Channing Smith, who was outed as bisexual in Manchester in the Coffee County area, and took his own life. And what are some of the things that we could tell to young people? What can you use your experience to say?
I mean, I'll never forget when I was probably 14, 15, back then it was like Yahoo chat rooms, and I was talking with somebody, who knows where, because we didn't really have, geography, location wasn't a huge thing back then. But I remember asking the room, what would you have done differently? And I remember somebody saying, I only wish I would have done it earlier. And I think everybody has their time and everybody has the right moment. But the sooner the better, because you're going to live a lot happier, healthier life. You might lose a couple of relationships along the way, but the ones that you're going to gain are going to be so much stronger. And you want those allies there. And I think, just and finding a support system, finding, if there's a group in school that you can that has similar interests or commonalities, you're going to be a lot more comfortable and able to really share yourself with them. And so find those groups, find the people that are similar to you, and find a support system that can really help you through that.
Thank you.
Right, and to piggyback off of that, I thought that was well said. I have 2 children, so we have this conversation already about being yourself, and it's not always easy. It's so important. And our son has expressed, he wears gender neutral clothing. Sometimes he wears skirts to school and so forth, and he's very brave. He wants to be himself more so than to worry about what might happen. So I think if we start early, that's great. For those that are coming out later in life with whether it be gender identity or sexual orientation or all of the above, I think the support system's important. I think it's also nice to have somebody right by your side, I don't know, maybe a mentor that can help you through those things. Let's take one step at a time. It is so much better. It is so much better to not have to hide and worry about what you're going to say, to be able to put pictures of your family on your desk at work. That was a big one for me. And I'm so glad that I don't worry about that now. For somebody that's coming out, there is incredible support. There are organizations, within the city, the Chamber, Oasis, so many places. Start somewhere, start small, and then build your way up.
And I think too, like, you might be surprised at somebody's reaction. Everybody is very afraid of the negative reaction that you're going to get. I know my personal experience, like I was nervous to tell my parents, and once they found out, it was literally the comment that I got from my dad was, "We're so glad that you don't have any health issues," because he thought it was something, in that regards, and it was literally just past the butter, and it was welcomed and it was embraced, and my family and friends, it was a great conversation, and I thought I was so afraid of this lashback, and it was very different, and this was 10 years ago, so the landscape's also changed quite a bit since then.
So the case about Channing really affected me because I could have been Channing. I almost was. I still have my suicide note that I wrote at 18. Drove to the bridge that I was going to jump off of and thought about what it would do to my mom and my family. And that's what stopped me. I think if it would, I came out to a person at school. They went and told everybody at school the next day, just like Channing. And I think if social media would have existed then, this was back in 2000, that I probably would have gone through with it, because not only would you've got it in person at school, your parents would have found out much more quickly, and you would have been bullied at a rate that happens now. What I say that because to me, the It Gets Better campaign is, to me, the most important thing out there, to tell LGBT youth it gets better, and it really does. And I live my life trying to be an example to show them that it gets better. You can be a leader in your city. You can represent the community out and open every day. I am the most out person I can be, because that's one part of my job and who I am and what needs to be seen. It's going to get better because you can grow up and start your own business and be certified as an LGBT business and not have it hurt you, but have it help you. And it's helping you because you were marginalized and stigmatized and not given a fair shake in today's society. You can go to work for a big corporation and they're going to have groups that support you. It gets better because you can be an LGBT person and run for president, the highest office in the land, and be open about that. It really does get better, and that's what I would say to the youth out there, to even the adults out there that are still struggling. We still have a long ways to go. We've come so far, but it's getting better. We have to keep working at it, though.
And looking at the horizon of what are some of the issues that you see that corporations and other businesses still have to handle? 20 years ago, as we talked about, we were still talking about benefits, for example, healthcare benefits and spousal benefits and these other things. What are some of the things that we should be on the lookout for come the next 5 to 10 years?
I think the hot topic is transgender, and we have to be ready for that to be the next wave and to help protect them, because they it's something that you may not understand, and it's just something that you again, they're human beings. Everybody is human beings, and we all deserve to have the same health care, the same benefits, the same pay. And that doesn't change. I think that's something that we as a community really need to bring to the forefront and make sure that they're protected.
Thank you.
Yeah, and on the transgender side, I think for corporations, it does start with that leadership. It does start with leading by example, and also having those policies in place for protection, so that those that identify as transgender in the workforce feel safe and feel the ability to be their authentic selves in the workplace and thrive.
we've got a lot of challenges. People think that marriage equality came to the land and LGBT people are happy and free and we don't have anything else to worry about. They're coming for us every single day. If it's the federal government with the federal with the president that we have now, to the state level, but you've got to fight on the local levels. We're spoiled here in our blue bubble of Nashville, and the people watching are spoiled in the blue bubble of the city that they're in. You only have to go 30, 40 miles outside this city to realize how much work we still have to do as the LGBT community. We are not widely accepted as we should be. We have attacks, every year from our state legislatures, and they're targeting trans because that's the easy one right now. So we've got to stay united and protect our trans brothers and sisters. But they're also they're still targeting marriage. Marriage is not, it's the law of the land now, but it is no way set in stone. So we need to stay vigilant. Staying engaged, voting, getting involved civically, continuing to advocate and tell your story, to come out. I think the reason we have come as far as we've come is Harvey Milk said, come out and tell your story. We need to continue to do that. Tell your story. Everybody knows somebody that's LGBT. They need to know you personally. It's a lot harder to legislate against you when they know you. Keep fighting for equality. Keep pushing our corporations to recognize us, respect us. There's a long ways to go. May or June is going to be a huge month with the Supreme Court ruling on LGBT issues being protected under Title VII. I hope the media covers that extensively, but starts early about what this means, what it will mean if it is on either way that case might be decided, and the effects that it would have. Because I think that will be a game-changing moment. We'll go in one direction or another. And we need to be ready for that.
And just to add to that, thank you for all those comments, because it is a continual process. It is a continual requirement, or just value that the corporations stand up for and back their teams and back their individuality of their teams. I did talk to the EEOC, a couple of representatives the other day, and questioned whether sexual orientation was a protected class, because in some parts of their website it was missing, and they said until the Supreme Court decides, we're leaving it up there. So it's very marginal right now. It's very iffy, and that's something on the corporate side, just having those policies and protections within the workplace at least protects the people that work for you.
Before we conclude, I just want to let people know that you can join the Pride Forward Employee Resource Group at the USA Today Network. You can email prideforward@gannett.com. We have nearly 100 members, and whether you are part of the LGBTQIA community or an ally, please join and share your voice with us. So with that, I'd like to ask each of you if you could give us some parting words in terms of what are your hopes for the future of your business and of the business climate, just to conclude this, and we could start with Brady and then finish off with Joe.
Yeah, I mean, my hope is that we continue to push for LGBT, but we also push for women in leadership roles. We include race, and it's a broader stroke of again, we are all humans, and this is a very particular topic that's very special to me. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't also consider all races and all genders, and ensure that we're pushing for equality across the board.
Thank you.
In the future, we would like to not exist, and we would like for there to be the microaggressions to be gone, for there to be diversity amongst the workforce, and for each individual to be welcomed and included within that organization. So we're a long way from there, yet when each individual can be their authentic selves and thrive, that would be a goal for sure.
Thank you.
Sean Henry, the CEO of the Nashville Predators, our hockey team here. We do a Predators Pride Night and bring in the community to go to a game and see rainbows and feel included and not out of place. And he came in and he spoke to the group and he goes, I can't wait for the day where we don't have to do this. And I was like, wait, what? And he goes, because society, we just don't need to have Pride Night. We don't need to show that we're accepting, and it's just the way we're going to be. And I'm like, yes, that hits it. Until that day happens, though, we're going to have Pride Night. So welcome and feel at home, and hockey's for everyone. Thank you for what you're doing within USA Today Network. Thank you to USA Today Network, Gannett, for having this group, because until we're there, we need these programs and support systems there for the community. We're not there yet, so we need to continue to work forward, work together. This is important, so thank you to all the corporations that do it, to the policymakers that this is an issue, and to the community for coming out. Thank you all for coming out and sharing your stories and being an LGBT out business owner and setting that example, so we can turn around to younger generations and say it gets better, and we're making it better.
We want to thank our panelists, Brady O'Rourke, Rachel Stanton, and Joe Woolley. We've had this conversation with the Pride Forward Employee Resource Group of the USA Today Network and also the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force of the Tennessean. Special thanks to Michael Anastasi, Maria Devereen, our executive editor, Brent Snyder, Kimber Beeler, Heather Cass, and all of the folks there at USA Today Network, especially LaToya Johnson and Kevin Hurd. I'm David Plazas for the Tennessean. Thank you very much.